What is going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of Off the Top Rope here on the Off the Mic Sports Network. I appreciate everybody tuning in. Thanks to everybody who was on the live stream post Dynamite. And everybody knows that it's very easy for me to talk about some of the low hanging fruit going on in All Elite Wrestling right now. And one of those things is Mercedes Mone, because I think a lot of people just get caught up in their feelings, or they have this affinity for Mercedes because she's so great and she did so many great things to help grow the women's like I said, there's a whole generation of female performers out there right now that are in women's professional wrestling because of the match that happened 10 years ago between Bayley and Sasha Banks at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. You guys remember, Izzy? You remember Izzy, the little girl? I think she was in the front row for, their Iron Woman match. She's now a professional wrestler. I think she's like 20, 21 years old. I think she's a WWE IDP. Zeta Steele, who's now officially in Evolve. She's very influenced by Sasha Banks. So there's no denying the impact that Mercedes Mone, Mercedes Varnado, Sasha Banks has done for this industry. There's no doubt about it. But I don't know how anybody could watch All Elite Wrestling over the last 16, 17, 18 months and tell me that Mercedes Mone has AEW and their women's division in her best. She's thinking about the best interest of the division. She's thinking about herself. Because I watched a 5-10 minute waste of a time segment with Mercedes celebrating her 9 belts, even though one of them isn't even a championship. It's the Owen Hart Cup tournament, for a championship match that she lost. No character growth out of that, by the way. Not even upset that she lost to Toni Storm in what's supposed to be the biggest women's match of all time. Just fine. Hey, let's go face another 3 women in London and escape by the skin of my teeth. And, everything's fine. I'm the greatest, whatever. And so she has this, we're going into All Out. We're coming out of, Forbidden Door on Sunday. And so she has this segment with Renee where all 9 of her belts are sitting on a table. She's talking about how great she is. They talk about Alex Windsor. And then the segment just ended. Where's Jamie Hayter? Where's Alex Windsor? Where's Anna Jay? Where's Ty Mello? Megan Bayne is on in the match before and feels completely and utterly irrelevant. Chris Statlander, who's already been beaten by that. Willow Nightingale. This whole women's division has been ravaged because Mercedes Mone is so concerned about vanity and concerned about, just personal, accolades that really mean nothing. And everybody's talking about, okay, so she has all 9 of these belts. It's great. Okay, first of all, I could probably tell you 3 of those titles I actually know. The rest of them, I have no fucking... I read them off to you guys a while back. 3 of these titles actually matter. One of them doesn't even really count. She's really 8 belts Monet, because the Owen Hart Cup title, the fact that she's carrying that around, that's why I think that this is just a whole vanity project and just, all about her. And it's not about the women's division. Because if it was really about the women's division and, about building stories and, helping the growth of AEW and not lining her pockets and feeding her ego, Alex Windsor or somebody else would have confronted her, and we would have found out who her next challenger was for her championship coming up at All Out. But we got none of that. We just got her cutting a promo for 5 to 10 minutes, and seriously, I don't know how a woman or anybody could be in the professional wrestling industry for 10, 15 years like Mercedes Mone is and still not be able to cut a functional promo. It's like English is her second language. Io Sky, who English is her second language. Io Sky cuts more convincing promos. Asuka cuts more convincing promos than Mercedes Mone, and English is their second language. I did not believe a single word that Mercedes Mone was saying. She sounds like a cartoon character. And this is all about feeding her ego because she feels like she was wronged by WWE. And in some respects, she was. Because I think she is one of the most gifted in-ring performers the women's division has ever seen. But to me, if this is about, growing the division, I know a lot of people are going to pinpoint and throw shit at me for basically, calling call bullshit on me for basically like, oh man, why aren't you ripping Tony Storm? Guys, Tony Storm walked in there and had to change her character after, she walked in there in 2022, you know, she had to be an interim champion, and after a year and a half had to change her character and got it over as the timeless gimmick. She's been able to elevate. How she's been booked, I don't like the tone, and this is somewhat on Tony Khan, but Mercedes Mone was a very, very, very high-profile signing for AEW. And none of those titles are being elevated by her holding them just because they're visible on television. Nobody knows who they are. Nobody knows the people that she's beaten. Nobody cares. And then she's flaunting around a belt, a commemorative belt that was given to her because she won a tournament to get a title match at the biggest show of the year that she lost. And she is showing no effects from whatsoever. Not even selling the defeat, the agony of defeat. It was brought up casually, but she's just walking around there like nothing matters. How am I supposed to care? Like all she is really caring about is, she doesn't care about AEW. She doesn't care about her fans. All she cares about is the money that she is making and the power that she has within creative and what she can do. Because if this were really about growing the women's division in AEW, and I said this on the post show, if this were about growing the women's division in AEW, they would have had way more to that celebration segment. You would have had somebody come out there and interrupt it, maybe throw her through the table, or have some sort of physicality. Where was Alex Windsor, who she brought up by name? Where's Jamie Hayter, who was back on the show? Where's the Triangle of Madness? Where's Queen Aminata? Where's any of these people that could easily be elevated by being in a feud with Mercedes Mone? She doesn't want to put anybody over. I don't care if you're throwing her in a match. The fact that she has won and she is walking around with a bunch of props, let's call it what it is. She's walking around with a bunch of props. The fact that she's doing that, it just makes everybody else look meaningless. Like, she's carrying around a bunch of other props. They all look, Lance Storm said this on Wrestling Observer like last week. When you start carrying all these other things around, it starts to water down the other titles. She's a TBS champion. Okay. Like, we made the TBS championship look like a complete and utter afterthought because, hey, she wanted to go challenge Tony Storm and then she lost. So how is that helping anything? Like, the whole thing was counterproductive. I think Tony Storm winning was probably the better outcome out of this to begin with. But what did that really, gain anything? Like, and now, like, she's out there, flaunting her winning a 9th belt in another promotion that nobody's given a shit about. So, like, why am I supposed to care? Why am I supposed to care? And all you simps and all you fanboys or whatever, and you guys know who you are, all you people who are just trying to glorify her and just basically say, she doesn't care about you. She cares about herself. And all you people are just going to feed into it because she's so great. At some point, she's got to pay it forward and do more for this division. Because everything that she has done since she got there in March of last year has not benefited anybody but her. And once you guys start to see that, then maybe there might be some tangible change. But she thinks it's okay. Tony's letting it go. Her fans are letting it go. She doesn't care about AEW. She doesn't care about Tony Khan. She doesn't care about, AEW or the fans or whatever. She is all about herself because she feels, and in some respect, I kind of feel that she may be justified in that. But that doesn't mean that you have to hold every other fucking championship known to man. Like, holding these other championships doesn't mean that you're much better than we already thought you were. That's the frustrating part for me. I don't get it, man. I really don't understand, like, why people just continue to just, gloss over this and act like everything's fine. I talk about this a lot on the channel because it's so glaring. It's ridiculous. It's like she got a 5-10 minute segment on the show that had one 10-minute women's match. And she was the only person involved in that segment with Renee. How does that help the women's division at all? When we don't know what she's doing with that championship, she's talking about all the other belts that she holds, not the TBS championship. Great. Cool. Just doesn't make any sense to me. Anyway, thanks so much. I'll see you guys soon. Bye-bye.